Happy Friday, Green Bay Packer fans. I'm Nariah Chapik, host of Pour Another Packers podcast. Thank you for being here. And as always, thank you for watching this video. Today's topic is life after Rodgers. This title in particular, I'm not completely in love with. I couldn't really find the right catchphrase for what I wanted to call this episode. But what it boils down to is should we start preparing for life after Aaron Rodgers? Is DeShone Kizer someone that we will keep around until Rodgers retires? And why are we even talking about this? So I'm going to dive into all these topics. It is time to pour ourselves another Packers podcast. So real quick before we get started, if you are a casual viewer of the show and you enjoy the content, I encourage you, click that subscribe button down below. It doesn't cost you anything, but it does cost me my pride, which is something that I hold dearly to me when we're talking about how much effort I put into the show with all my family and friends. I put a lot of effort into this, and just one little click from a subscribe button means the absolute world to me. So today's topic, Aaron Rodgers. He's not going anywhere. If you are emotional about this topic like I am, you can kind of breathe easy and relax. RELAX. I had no intention of saying that whatsoever on this show. But why is this becoming a topic? There's a couple reasons why this is a topic, and it's not something that I just kind of pulled out of thin air. You had a DeShone Kizer interview this past week with NFL.com saying how he goes out there every day preparing to be a future starter in the NFL, a future Super Bowl winning MVP. And then you also have, whether you realize it or not, you have a 35-year-old Aaron Rodgers. Brett Favre was 35 years old back in 2005 when they drafted Aaron Rodgers. And it's common to find yourself in this age group to start mentally preparing for what comes next. Now, Rodgers still has a lot of gas in the tank. He is signed through the 2023 season, so we have him sticking around for quite a while, and I don't think we need to worry about it. But it's normal when you hit this age range to maybe start preparing for what should come and what we need to do to have a successful franchise way down the road into the late 20s and early 30s, and hopefully for the rest of the century. But there's something to be said about having a backup quarterback that follows a Hall of Famer. I think that is truly important. When you have, Rodgers obviously benefited from having a couple years behind Brett Favre where he didn't have that pressure to come in there and be the face of the franchise and go out there and just carry the team. He got to see how the offense works, the speed of the NFL, kind of get his feet wet. And I think that is something that helped Rodgers undeniably. And it is crucial as we plan these next couple of years ahead that we do find someone, because there's just experience to take away from it. Outside of Steve Young, who replaced Joe Montana, and Aaron Rodgers, who replaced Brett Favre, history doesn't really show us that lightning can strike twice in a bottle. It's very rare, and it's even more rare for lightning to strike 3 times in a bottle. So let's calm down. Let's take a breath. Let's look at the history of our backup quarterbacks with Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers, and maybe what we should expect and what we should plan for as we look forward into the future, past the 2019 season, past the 2023 season, and it all starts with Brett Favre. So right off the bat, of course, Brett Favre came to the Green Bay Packers in that 1992 season. He became an instant starter, and Ty Detmer was his backup quarterback. He was drafted in the 9th round of the 92 draft. I have to stop and chuckle there. They used to have 9 rounds. They probably had more, but 9 rounds in an NFL draft would that alone would drive me crazy. 7 drives me crazy. I don't even care past round 4, quite frankly. But he spent 4 seasons with the Green Bay Packers. He was primarily, the backup, if not the 3rd string backup for the Packers. Then you have Mark Brunell, drafted by Green Bay in the 5th round in the 1993 draft the following year. He went on to have a rather successful career. He was a 3-time Pro Bowl selection, being the quarterback of the Jacksonville Jaguars, and he too ended up winning himself a Super Bowl ring with the 2009 New Orleans Saints behind as a backup quarterback for Drew Brees. So he went on to have a successful career. So you have Jim McMahon, obviously controversial, absolutely sex muffin from the 1980s era Bears. Prior to coming to Green Bay, he won the Super Bowl 20 with the Chicago Bears and was coming off of a 15-1 record in that 1985 season. He won his second Super Bowl in that 95-96 season as the backup to Brett Favre, and of course Super Bowl 31. So Jim McMahon, absolutely solid quarterback. He wasn't a rookie quarterback, but rather a veteran backup quarterback that we had in the history of the last 20 years or so of backup quarterbacks for Green Bay. Can't say backup quarterback of Brett Favre, of course, without saying the name Doug Peterson. So 8 seasons in Green Bay total is what Doug Peterson spent with the Green Bay Packers. He was the third quarterback behind McMahon in that Super Bowl winning team. So he won his first Super Bowl in Super Bowl 31 as the backup quarterback. He worked out with Green Bay following a Ty Detmer injury in Week 10 of 1995 season. Had a 3-year stint with the Eagles and Browns before returning, and of course now he is the head coach of the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles, who won that Super Bowl 52 back in 2018. So not this last season, but the season before. So Doug Peterson obviously wasn't really possibly cut out to be a starter or a starting quarterback in the NFL, but obviously he learned a lot playing behind Brett Favre and has gone on to be a successful coach. He's got things going really well out there in Philadelphia. Last but not least on my list of backup quarterbacks for Brett Favre is Matt Hasselbeck. Drafted by Green Bay in the 6th round of the 1998 draft. Spent his first season on the practice squad, so he didn't even quite make the roster in his first season, but eventually went to Seattle, led them to 6 playoff appearances and even a Super Bowl appearance. Matt Hasselbeck is a great quarterback. Is able to do and accomplish a lot of things throughout his career. So looking at just this backup list as far as you have for the Green Bay Packers, since Favre became the starter in 1992, you're looking at Ty Detmer, you're looking at Mark Brunell, and you're looking at Matt Hasselbeck. So you have 3 quarterbacks that were drafted, at least from my list. I mean, I'm sure there were more throughout too. I didn't dive into it a whole lot. But these 3 names that they drafted quarterbacks throughout Brett Favre's career. And then, of course, you got Aaron Rodgers, who was the another quarterback drafted in Brett Favre's career. And really, all throughout that time frame, you're talking about anywhere from 92 to the early 2001 era that they were, considering drafting quarterbacks, that they picked these guys. They didn't just sign them up off the street. So it's normal, I think, is what I'm trying to get at, for you to go out there and select quarterbacks, draft quarterbacks, develop them, use them as trade equity, a la Brett Hundley, although that probably didn't pan out the greatest. But it's always good to have that pipeline develop and move on. And the Packers with Brett Favre's era did an excellent job with that. Segueing, we should talk about Aaron Rodgers' backup situation. So the Doug Peterson to Brett Favre is the Matt Flynn to the Green Bay Packers. So he was drafted by Green Bay in the 7th round in the 2008 draft. So just really, it was the same year that Rodgers became the starter. Spent his entire rookie contract in Green Bay. And of course, in his final game against Detroit, he went out there and threw for 480 yards, 6 touchdowns, both single game records for a Green Bay Packer quarterback. So there's your fun fact for the weekend that you can tell all your friends. Because of that game, he went on to sign a 3-year, $20.5 million contract with Seattle. It was also the same year, however, that Seattle went out there and drafted Russell Wilson. And once they had Russell Wilson on their contract, that 3-year contract that Matt Flynn signed just blew up. It didn't matter anymore to Seattle because they knew they had the future and Russell Wilson. So he got moved around. He went to Oakland for a little while. He went to Buffalo for a little while. And then, of course, Aaron Rodgers goes down in the 2013 season, November 2013. That was the year he fractured his clavicle, and they needed a backup quarterback because what they had at the time was just not working. So they bring Matt Flynn back. He does carry him along. They go to a 7-1 record. Rodgers comes back. He throws that incredible, 4th down completion to Randall Cobb towards the end of regulation. The Packers go into the playoffs, and the Packers go on to lose to San Francisco in the wild card game. I was at that game. It was cold. It was cold. It was a cold game. So with Matt Flynn out of the way, there's a couple other guys that have backed up Rodgers, and no, we're not going to talk about Vince Young because he only spent about 2 weeks on the Packers roster. But you had Graham Harrell. He was the lone backup for Aaron Rodgers in the 2012 season, although he did spend 3 years previous to that as a backup quarterback for the Packers. Brett Hundley would probably be the most frequent and most common name that comes to mind. He was drafted by Green Bay in the 5th round of the 2015 draft. Got the majority of his playing time in the 2017 season. That was the year that Rodgers broke his collarbone. Good old Anthony Barr. There's still a place for you in hell. In that season, Hundley threw for 1,800 yards. He had 12 interceptions, 9 touchdowns. His one highlight was a 134 passer rating against the Steelers on Sunday Night Football, where he also threw for 3 touchdowns. But outside of that, he didn't have a stellar resume built up in Green Bay. However, he was traded to Seattle for a 6th-round pick in August of 2018. And if you are curious what he is doing today, he has a 1-year contract with the Arizona Cardinals. It's a little over $1 million for a 1-year contract. I think the Brett Hundley the show is coming to an end, unfortunately. Now, of course, the reason why Brett Hundley got traded away to Seattle was because DeShone Kizer was also brought onto that Packers squad earlier in the year, and I think they saw something in Kizer that they didn't obviously see in Brett Hundley. So Kizer, former 2nd-round pick, number 52 overall for the Cleveland Browns. He had that magical 0-16 season with the Browns in his first year where he threw for 22 interceptions. And obviously, I get it. I mean, if you were the front office, if you are an owner or a GM of the Cleveland Browns, you want to try to find a solution because it is nearly impossible to go winless. But the Browns did it, and congratulations. I believe you guys even threw a parade for that, which is fantastic. So they traded away Demarius Randall to pick up Kizer. I thought that was, at the time, that was one of those Brian Gutekunst moves that I thought was absolutely phenomenal. Randall was causing nothing but drama in the locker room. He actually walked out of the stadium for a game. He was a problem in that entire roster. So to get rid of Hundley, who obviously showed that he wasn't capable of being, a reliable backup or a successor to Aaron Rodgers, they went out and got Kizer. He made 2 regular season appearances last year. The first coming on that opening night game against the Chicago Bears, where he threw for 132 yards. He had that 1 interception. He gave it to Khalil Mack, which was turned into be a pick 6. So obviously not the greatest showing, but of course Rodgers came back in the second half. Magic happened, and it was wonderful. And then his second appearance with the Green Bay Packers was the season finale, where Rodgers went out with a concussion, and they ended up getting shut out 31-0 against the Detroit Lions. So let's hit the pause button real quick on DeShone Kizer. And for all of you that are potentially on board with him being, the backup quarterback, successor, future starter in the NFL, his resume hasn't really shown us this so far in his career. So he has that magical 0-16 season. He had 2 appearances last year in the regular season that definitely weren't that stellar. If we go back to his college career, yes, he had a good 15 season with the Fighting Irish, where he threw for just shy of 2,900 yards. He had 21 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. Irish had a 10-2 record that year, but they did end up going on to lose against the Ohio State Buccaneers in the Fiesta Bowl. And then his second season didn't live up. I mean, his stats were similar, but the team finished 4-8. They didn't even get a bowl appearance. I mean, this is the guy that I think had a lot of accolades coming out of college that obviously was high praise, being the 2nd-round pick for Cleveland on a Cleveland team that obviously struggles to find themselves a consistent starting quarterback. I don't see a whole lot from Kizer's history that leads me to believe that he's going to be a starter, but I do think that I see him as a backup quarterback, someone that can come in and hopefully, carry us far enough along until either A, Rodgers gets back on the field, or really that's the only solution. Because if Rodgers doesn't get back on the field, then we're all in trouble. Now, I do have an inside Brown source. He is a coworker of mine who is an absolute diehard Browns fan, and he made a point that I thought was pretty good. And he goes on to say that, if the opposition has a good defensive line, that Kizer gets flustered because he can't pick up those quick reads quite as fast as he needs to. And this was evident, if you're only following him from the Packers perspective, this was quite evident in the limited playing time that we saw against NFL starters, especially when you had someone like Khalil Mack, who was bull rushing him. The entire second quarter that Rodgers was out, it became clear that he was not sure what to do, and he panicked and threw, terrible passes. It just wasn't going well. This inside Brown source also goes on to say in college he had enough time to make big plays or run for yards because the offensive line would support that, but that doesn't necessarily translate to the NFL. You have to plan for those defensive lines to come at you at all times, and then the whole running quarterback thing just really hasn't translated all that well in the NFL either. Outside of a few exceptions like the Michael Vicks of the olden days or possibly the Cam Newtons of today's, you don't really see running quarterbacks, just ripping up the league like they used to. Yes, quarterbacks can run, and yes, they can still get 15, 20 yards, but this is a pass-first quarterback league versus a run-first quarterback league, and that's something that, failed with Brett Hundley. It has failed with DeShone Kizer. It has failed with Vince Young when he was, slimmer and healthier. It's just something that doesn't work in the NFL, and that's one of the main reasons why I don't see Kizer, really going too far into a starting role, let alone taking over the reins of the Packers anytime soon. I do want to quote DeShone Kizer in that NFL.com interview because I did like this quote. I do like where his mindset is with it, and it goes on to say, "I don't see myself as Aaron Rodgers' backup for the final era of his career. I see myself as a future Super Bowl MVP. That's the goal that I want to head toward. That's the level I want to play at. Therefore, if I'm competing and focused on being the backup quarterback, then once again, I'm limiting myself." So I like where his head's at. I mean, what else would you possibly want out of a backup quarterback than that hunger and that drive to be a starter in the NFL? And I respect that. I do believe we're looking at, currently the 4 quarterbacks that are on the roster heading into training camp. We have Aaron Rodgers, DeShone Kizer, Tim Boyle, and Manny Wilkins. I do see the Packers keeping 2 quarterbacks on their roster into the regular season with another on the practice squad. And I do see DeShone Kizer being that backup quarterback heading into the 2019 season. But I don't see him being the successor. I don't see him really having a successful starting role anywhere in the NFL unless he can pick up the next 2-3 years of his career with the Packers and sitting behind Aaron Rodgers and pick up and develop and grow and mature. He's got the raw talent to go out there and sling the ball around and make things happen, but he definitely needs to figure out the game, slow down the game to be a starter in the NFL. So if history has taught us anything, it's that backups don't become starters after sitting behind quarterbacks for too long. I mean, you look at Doug Peterson, he had 8 seasons behind Brett Favre. He was the longest backup quarterback behind Brett Favre. Obviously, never became the face of the franchise. Then you had Matt Flynn, a total of 6 seasons behind Aaron Rodgers. Really, there's 2 things that happen if you are a backup quarterback for too long. The first argument is that if you are a talented enough quarterback in the NFL to be a starter on a different team, you will be traded away and you will have a career somewhere else on a different NFL team, and there's very little likelihood that they will keep you around long enough to possibly carry on the franchise for a couple years at that point. This is going to be your Mark Brunells of the NFL. This will be your Matt Hasselbecks of the NFL. These are guys that after a little bit of time as a backup quarterback in Green Bay, they went on to have a successful career. The other option that kind of sits there for some of these quarterbacks is that they will fade off into the sunset. So they will be backup quarterbacks. They will continue to be backup quarterbacks. They can't prove themselves, or eventually they just don't pick up any interest from any other teams. And those are going to be your Brett Hundleys of the world. Those are going to be your Matt Flynns of the world. And those are going to be your Doug Petersons of the world. They had successful backup quarterback careers, but they never really turned it around and became the face of a franchise. To wrap this all up, we have to ask the question, who will be the successor to Aaron Rodgers? And the answer that you guys have been waiting for, and the answer that I am here to share with you, is that we don't know. We truly don't know who the face of the franchise will be after Aaron Rodgers. And that's quite frankly because the future quarterback of the Green Bay Packers is probably still in high school. He could potentially still be in middle school. I mean, let's think about this for a little bit. So Rodgers is signed through the 2023 season. He will be 39 years old at the end of the 2023 season. Tom Brady right now is 42 years old. At least he'll be 42 years old in 3 weeks. He turns 42 early August, and Rodgers will turn 42 in December of 2026. So that is a long ways away. That is 7 years from now. I have a wife that's expecting in just a couple months. I will have a 7-year-old by the time Aaron Rodgers is 42, and I am fairly confident that I will have a 5 or a 6-year-old by the time that Aaron Rodgers knows who the backup is and we have a backup quarterback that will eventually take over for the Green Bay Packers. I originally thought that down the road, maybe Josh Rosen could be a potential backup or successor to Aaron Rodgers. I do see a lot of talent in him. Yes, he has, similar to DeShone Kizer, kind of flustered or fizzled out in his first year down in Arizona, but he's a talented quarterback. He's going to have a successful career. This is a hot take because I know many of you don't believe that, but I originally thought that might be an argument that I would make for the show, but quite frankly, we don't know who the backup quarterback is going to be. We don't know who the future is of Aaron Rodgers. And the reason why I put this whole video together was for the sole purpose to give you some history, to give you some realization that we don't need to be talking about the future of backup quarterback. What we need right now is someone who can come in there if Rodgers needs to sit out a game or two and carry the Packers to a victory or two. The realization, and I've preached this since probably my second or third video that I ever posted, is that if Rodgers goes down, the Packers go down. It's quite that simple. It's the reality of the situation. Kizer can be a talented and great backup, but he is not someone that, like a Nick Foles, that if we lose Aaron Rodgers, he can carry us to a Super Bowl and win us a Super Bowl. It's just not the reality of the situation. Nick Foles is the exception to the rule. He is not the rule, and it's just a reality. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I am losing my voice. Believe it or not, I don't know if I can zoom in on this or not. It is 1:59 in the morning. I'm gonna get myself some sleep. I'm gonna post this video so you guys can enjoy it on this beautiful, glorious Friday here in the Wisconsin area. I don't want to give you guys away. I don't want to tell you exactly where I live. But as always, thank you again for watching the video. I got one more video to do before the start of training camp. So if you want to look forward to what I'm going to talk about headlines, things that we can, all the competitions and the headlines that we can expect for training camp in my next video. I'm going to try and record that early on the next week because I'm going to be busy Thursday, Friday, Saturday next week. So as always, thank you for checking out this video. Click that subscribe button, comment down below, and as always, I will see you on the internet. Thanks for watching.